Alright folks, this is a Pro-Bel 32 by 32 matrix. I did think about delaying this video because we've literally just looked at a matrix, but this is what I'm working on at the moment and it didn't seem like there being a lot of point in putting it into the rack and wiring it up and then having to take it all apart again to make a video on. So here we go. This is quite a bit newer than the quartz matrices we were looking at. This one does SDI, in fact it does HD-SDI. Came out probably around the early 2000s, I think 2004-ish. You can see that it's incredibly slim, and that's mainly because there are no power supplies in this. There seems to have been sort of a craze around that time on making these as minuscule as possible by not having the power supplies built in, and you can see that we have two sockets on the bottom here to take 5 volts. There's a tray that can be mounted on here sticking out like this, if you get what I mean, and you put your two adapters into there and they supply 5 volt, and it only takes one to run this, so it's a resilient setup. On the back obviously we have our inputs along the middle section here and outputs along the outer section here. There were different models of these that could only have maybe 16 outputs, or I think there was one that went right down to only 8 inputs and outputs. This is the full 32 by 32. You can have it in the current configuration. It is a proper 32 by 32, but you can also set it to be two 16 by 16s, if you see what I mean, for 2 different levels and a few different bits and pieces like that. This is the reference input so that it will switch properly during the vertical blanking interval. You can also connect this expansion port, so there are both master and slave versions of these, and you can control the slave version through this connector from a master one. Basically this has 8-bit parallel address for the source and destination, and it will be controlled then through this big connector. The actual normal controls are done either through Ethernet or via these 2 ports here. Now these look like RS-232 ports, but they're not. This config port is an RS-232 port. This connects to a computer which runs a piece of software on Windows that allows you to set up the names of your sources and destinations and a few other things like that. But the 2 control ports actually use RS-485, and that allows you to connect a big long chain of control interfaces and also UMDs, things like that. And whenever you switch on, this switch here controls whether you are using Ethernet or the second control port. So if you're using Ethernet, you can't use the second control port, or vice versa, you can't use the second control port if you're using Ethernet. And whenever we take this apart in just a second, that will make sense. In fact, I think that's about all there is to see on here. There's a couple of hexadecimal switches here that allow you to choose what level the router is on, things like that. But yeah, I think that's about it. So let's have a look inside this thing. So the 2 halves separate like so. This is one big solid piece of probably aluminium, but all the interesting bits are around the back here. So what have we got here? Let's turn it round. Yeah, you can see the whole thing there, can't you? So along the middle here we have all, hang on a second, what way around was it? Yeah, so down the middle here are all the inputs, and you can see each of these chips is a cable equalizer. So that is taking the cable, the SDI cable input, and balancing it and making it, I think these possibly reclock it too. So you have a reclocked signal going to the actual matrix. And then these are cable drivers. You can see they're quite a bit smaller, and again there's one of those for each input. This part in the middle here that's actually a mezzanine board, this is the control board. You can see we have a CPU, RAM, flash memory, and I think there's a CPLD somewhere on here too. And these This one control board was used in quite a range of Pro-Bel's products. I believe this same control board was used in things like the Sirius, and there is a list of models somewhere that used this same board, but I don't have it to hand right now, so just take my word for it that this is the same board that was used in a lot of things. If we take a second and just remove it, don't want to lose that washer. Underneath here there is some kind of FPGA, I think that is. Either an FPGA or a CPLD, I'm not 100% sure what that's doing. I would guess there is possibly enable lines on some of these transmitters and receivers here, and this is allowing the processor above to address those. I'm not 100% on that because I haven't taken this board right out yet. This nice shiny chip, this is the actual matrix. You can see it's a BGA package, and it is literally just a standard crosspoint chip, so all the inputs and outputs go to this chip, and everything else is just talking to this. The next thing though that's quite interesting is this thing here, which is helpfully labelled, I don't know if you can see that, as chip in capital letters. So the control board is expecting RS485 or RS232 or RS422 even. There's obviously slight differences between them, but you control which one you use through the PC. Obviously at some point they decided, well, we want to have Ethernet control on this thing. So rather than redo the entire control board here, what they've done is they've brought in this chip. And what this is actually an entire computer on a module. So there's a CPU in here, there's some flash memory, there's some RAM, and it runs DOS, I believe. According to the data sheet, it does anyway, or something to that effect. And it has serial and an Ethernet port on it. And you're probably already beginning to see where this is going, especially when I pointed out that you can only use either the control port or the Ethernet. And yes, in fact, what's happening is this chip connects to one of the RS422 ports on the control board, and it essentially emulates a control panel whenever you send it commands over Ethernet. It's quite cool in that it offers an FTP port, and you can upload files to it and it will just serve them like a web page. So you can actually make your own custom interfaces and things on this. I don't know if that's really how Pro-Bel intended it to be used, but certainly that's what I've been doing. And it works incredibly well. As you can imagine, it's very hard to get the config software for all these things nowadays, but I have to say I'm very fortunate in that I put out a couple of calls on Reddit and places like that not too long ago, and a lot of folks stepped in and were able to get me the config software not only for this control board but also for this chip. So I was able to upload the correct firmware to this to make it work properly, and also get the configs done on this computer or this control board. So that's all working now. But that's pretty much all there is to say about this. I mean, it's a really small little, a really slim little compact unit, and it works perfectly well as far as I've been able to test so far. So you will probably be seeing this again in the not too distant future as I explain exactly what I'm going to do with it. So yeah, thanks for watching.